Welcome back to TLT Talks. I am here at, it's kind of like Casa de Litvak. It's the Williamsburg waterfront. It is gorgeous outside today, and I can't see anything. It is very sunny and very beautiful, and they're still drilling in my house and beautiful outside, so I thought I would do this out here today. I have a very, very special guest for us today. Hang on one second. Let me bring him on. We got through this much quicker this week. Last week it was a whole disaster to bring on Levy. Levy, if you're watching, this is how it's done. Nice and simple, real easy. Michael Savage, how goes it, sir?
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I like the shirt. You got style, man.
I gotta represent. This is how we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to TLT Talks. So let me just give you a real quick introduction of Mike Savage, and then I'll pass it to him to introduce himself. But my very dear friend, the Wendy Rhodes of the Litvak team, for those that watch, Billions, 30-year Tony Robbins head coach, top performance peak coach, the facilitator of our TLT Tony Robbins events. I am super stoked, man. You know how much I love you, Mike, and I think our people could get so much value from you with all your experience. So maybe I took away all of the sharing ability, but why don't you go ahead and share some things about yourself, anything you want to share?
Yeah, no, perfect. I'm privileged, obviously, to have been around Tony for most of my life.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to facilitate events and still to work with clients and love what I do. And obviously, our conversation today leans into the unique perspective that we have because we're a global coaching company.
Right.
So we're working with companies and individuals all around the world. And we always count it as a special time when we get to interact together, especially with audiences, because you don't just do real estate. You facilitate relationships, and you're in the heart of, the heartbeat of the United States, New York City, right? And a lot of people have concern about, what's going on in New York and how things are. And I love the fact that you're sitting there smiling, the city behind you, showing how beautiful things can be, even in moments where things are tough. It's fucking gorgeous.
Look at it. It's unbelievable. Yeah, man. You're so right, man. We forget, look, yes, there's some craziness going on out there right now. And I'm not naive to the challenges. And can we live in gratitude? Can we still pay attention to what we can be grateful for? Exactly. It doesn't have to be very big. We're breathing, we've got family, we've got our health, for most of us, hopefully. And so can we still, even we can't control, and it's directly from you and Tony, we can't control what happens around us. We can absolutely control how we show up, which is ironic because it's actually kind of the topic of our conversation today is leadership, right? And so it's never been more important to be a leader. Guys, by the way, I want to keep this really interactive and really engaging. So I don't often have somebody like Mr. Savage on the show. And so we have some agenda for you guys. We have some talking points to get through. But if you've got questions along the way, I'm reading all the messages. I got Sarah supporting me reading the messages. Drop the questions in the box. If I feel necessary, I'll pause this to go to one of your questions. We'd love for you guys to get as much value as possible out of this. So Mike, leadership, right? I mean, it's from, I think when people think of the word leadership, maybe they have a misconception of what it is. So from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about, leadership and how important it is in today's,
I'm going to lead the camera back to you. We're staring at a chair right now. I don't know if that's happening there. But no. What I'm saying, there's your view, for some odd reason, we're staring at a chair. We're not staring at you. I think it may have flipped. All right. So, no, that's good.
I'm waving at people, and sometimes I push that button.
No, it's earlier. The lady with the dog was really cute earlier this morning. So leadership's funny because when I got into coaching and started learning from Tony and attending events, this topic, of leadership used to come up in, corporate trainings when companies would want us to come in and say, we need some leadership training. So what the hell does that really mean? Right. And what I love about Tony is he will not use a term or a phrase without a measure or a framework around it. Right. And so one of the frameworks that I learned early on and how we can all, you, me, careful, you, me, good, you're staying hydrated. You, me, and everyone else look at leadership is measuring it with breadth and depth. Right, so Tony talks about breadth being like, your ability to communicate, one, with yourself, right, and then two, one-on-one with small groups, and then hear that message translated even when you're not present. And that, we do that across multiple contexts. And then depth is, can we control our own emotional state?
Right.
Can we shift someone else's state in a moment? Can we shift a belief? Right, a long ingrained belief in someone, and maybe help them see a new perspective. And by the way, that's a huge skill to use right now.
Yeah.
While people are feeling anxiety and things, we'll dive into that, I'm sure, in a little bit. And then finally, does your leadership presence, your thought leadership exist even when you're not present? And so we look at leadership and we measure it from those two perspectives, and anyone can accept those measures for themselves. You don't have to have a title or an office with a plaque on it in order to accept those principles. That's how we all look and say, am I measuring myself against those leadership benchmarks?
Yeah, exactly. And so what are some tips, man, for somebody that's not, for someone that wants to improve on their leadership muscle? What would you say are one or two tips to focus on, or one or two leadership principles that you would encourage people to look into? Give our people some nuggets here.
Well, something that we've talked about, something that I learned from Tony. Tony has like these what he calls the 3 mandates of leadership. Mm-hmm. Number 1, see it as it is, not worse than it is.
Right.
And we live in a time right now where, based on the narrative, if you allow yourself to go from informed to programmed, and I always say this, like, watch the news briefing, but don't let the news anchors tell you for 3 hours what you believe, right?
Right.
So see it as it is,
right,
but not worse than it is. And our mind is a problem-solving machine. It wants to go solve problems. And if you're a driver, if you're a high D dominance, right, like you almost get off on solving problems. So you want to make sure you don't create them, right? So see it as it is, not worse than it is. Then you have to create, and that's sort of create a vision for it being better. And the reason we follow like real leaders is because they create a vision that we can grasp onto that's better than what we see in the moment.
That's right.
Right.
We get inspired by their message and we want to get on board.
That's it. And then finally you make that vision real, and Tony says make the vision real now, which is what's a step you can take towards that vision. It may not materialize in front of your face, but like, can you start with gratitude? Can you begin to greet people with a smile? Can you find adventure in that? Like those little things stacked start to shift your state, and now you're leading, because when everybody else is in a challenge state, you're coming in a resourceful state, and from there you show other people that that's possible.
Yeah, which is not at all important right now. Not even like a little bit.
Not at all.
Yeah, man, it's so true. And like, and this shows up everywhere. This isn't like just business or politics. This is your marriage. This is your kids. This is your friends. Like, I talk to we have obviously, a pretty big network, and I talk to so many times, a couple or a married couple or whatever. And look, I just want her to change. And it's like, dude, you change. Like, you change first. You show up first. And then that'll be enough. That'll be a leadership and a principle to see the shift you want to happen. But it's got to start internal. It's got to start. It's got to start with you first. And especially now, like, I'm reading, I'm staying informed, obviously, and I'm on 100 calls a day about what's going on with the market. Should we list now? Should we sell now? Should we buy now? All this different stuff. And it's like, in a lot of the narrative, the conversation, the belief system is, well, what if New York goes bankrupt? Well, New York's not going to go bankrupt. Like, just see it as it is. No. Are there challenges? Sure. Again, I'm not naive to the challenges. Like, again, Cuomo just extended through June. And so right away, boom, oh my God, all the businesses in New York City are going to close. Like, okay, so there'll be some challenges. But a statement like that, it doesn't solve it. One of the things that, you and I work on all the time is looking at things through solvable terms, right? It's like, look at it as something solvable. Don't look at it as this big thing that's going to create emotional states of overwhelm, of fear, of panic. But instead, okay, what's the thing I got? What must happen next is, right? Like, I literally still have the sticker on my computer. What must happen next is. Forget about 10 miles down the road. What's the next step? What can I solve right now to just lift the anchor, move the needle, and just move this thing forward just a little bit? So,
and Tony says something. The first time I ever heard it was on Get the Edge, which is now Ultimate Edge. And there's a bonus CD called Daily Magic, which is like incantations, affirmations, breathing exercises. And he says, what's something you can be grateful for? You know, Tony leans in with that. What's something you can be grateful for right now? And he says, I know you may not be able to think of something, but listen, what's bad? He goes, what's bad is always present. And so is what's good.
Oh my God.
It's what you choose to focus on.
Right,
oh my gosh, literally just posted. I love it.
Sugar, man. Right? Well done, sir. Well done.
Right. What's wrong is always available, so is what's right. What's bad is always present, so is what's good.
Yeah.
It's what you choose to focus on.
Yeah.
Of course, we're concerned about people's health. It's different in different parts of the country, so it has to be handled in different ways. But even with challenges like you and I in the last couple of videos where we've seen the city, it's like that view has like never been so good.
Yeah.
Right? So there's always an opportunity. There's always an opportunity. We just have to choose to direct our mind, this problem-solving machine, to focus on what's good.
Right, and I've gotten that a lot. Like not just to give myself, you of all people know how hard I am on myself, but just to give myself like a little pat on the back. Like I've gotten so many times, like, dude, with everything's going on, how are you staying still a beat? Because of where my focus is. My focus is like, it's crazy, but look at this view. I have all of them, our sellers and our landlords. What's going on? What are we doing? What are we doing? And all of my focus is on, oh my God, how am I going to show up for them? Like, how am I going to get no. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to test that. And if that doesn't work, we're going to test the next day and just stay in it, lean in, stay in it. I mean, being a good leader is also just showing up, being a good leader.
Being present.
Being fully present. Like, that's a big thing I've worked on is when I'm with people, I'm not on my phone. I'm just fully there with that person.
Yeah.
And we talked on the show about, Leonard Steinberg, you and I just talked about this a little bit right before, the value and how rituals and routines have never been, more important. And a couple weeks ago, we had Chief Evangelist Leonard Steinberg on the show. It was one of the first real big names to come over to Compass like forever ago, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he spoke of the importance of rituals and routines. And I'm like, you know what? We got Chief Evangelist of Compass, and we have like, huge Tony Robbins coach, and both of them completely separate of each other talking about routines and rituals. So, can you talk a little bit about that, the importance of routines, rituals, some good things to put into practice?
And let me talk about why it's really important, especially right now. One thing that a lot of people are facing in terms of this challenge is that they can't go to work, or work has radically shifted in terms of how it feels.
Yeah.
And you got to remember, Tony talks about how all of us are driven to meet our 6 human needs. And we're always looking for healthy vehicles to meet those needs. That ultimately creates fulfillment. We have class 1 experience, and the vehicle we choose, good for us, good for others, good for the greater good. That's a high level vehicle, meets our need at a level 10. Great. Work, employment, professional drive for most people is a vehicle that meets their need for certainty, income, food over their head. They know the skill set they can work at, meets their need for variety, meets their need for significance when they accomplish, meets their need for connection with coworkers and customers, meets their need for growth, right? Because they're constantly having to do more. And in many times when you're helping families like make a huge investment and helping, it's contribution because you're solving problems. So work meets most of our needs, and we spend 8 and 10 hours a day there.
Right.
And now that's gone.
Yeah.
For a lot, it's either gone or it's changed so radically that their mind is trying to find new ways to meet their needs. What some people are doing is opening the refrigerator 20 times.
Let us talk about that too.
Woo! Right? Like, hello, you got to hang a sign that says there's nothing new here, right? So the idea of why rituals and habits are so important, I work with this group down in Mexico, and I love them. They've got like this resort Vedanta. They have one of the most amazing resorts on the planet. And the property director, he's like, listen, I'm still waking up at 6 a.m. I'm still doing my routines and rituals. And you can see it's translating because the whole team is staying in some form of professional habit because the leader has maintained habits of training, not only himself, but the team, even when they can't be on site.
Yeah.
Because he knows the importance of keeping that so that when they come back, they've got that muscle. You've done the same thing with your team, with your audiences through stuff like this. But our habits have to come in the form of like training our mind to be focused in the right place before we engage. Because right now, what's trying to engage us is a lot of perspective and interesting leadership from all sides. And what we have to do first is decide how are we going to lead ourselves, right? And so those habits of incantations, of affirmations, of physical activity. Your physical transformation through this has been fucking outstanding, right? And I mean, you're half the, you know that song, I was half the man I used to be, half the man. So you've got to take a look and say, am I doing the things to, Tony calls it priming. Am I doing the things to prime my mind, to tell this thing what to do? Look, you speak a couple languages, right? And there's people who speak English, Spanish, French. You weren't born speaking any of those languages. You programmed your mind, right? So we have to program our mind to speak the language of discipline. We've talked about this a number of times, to speak the language of success, to speak the language of consistency. And that's only done through building that emotional muscle through daily rituals and daily habits.
Yeah, especially discipline, man. That one resonates with me always. Like Will Smith, you know, you and I both love Will Smith. He's got this real great bit on discipline, how discipline is self-love. Like, I love you too much to let you have that pizza you worked out so hard. Or like, I love you too much. I know she's a great girl, but she's your boy's girlfriend. I love you too much to let you do that. You know, like, it's a really good bit. Anyone types in Will Smith, discipline, self-love, it'll come right up. It's he's got a bunch of good stuff. Die on the treadmill. He's got, like, I won't be, anyways, he's got a bunch of good stuff. Yeah,
I call it wow. The wisdom of will. The wisdom of will.
It's good. That's good. Yeah, and so talk to us about, so look, obviously, you know, you're a master of leadership. You know, I've been studying with you for some time, so it's become a real good muscle of mine. For those people that are staying in high spirits, for those people that are, you know, managing their internal, you know, language very well, that are their internal dialogue well, that are grateful, you know, they're in great shape, but maybe they know someone, a family member, a friend, or whatever, and they're not coached in leadership, and they're not coached in coaching, or, you know, whatever. What's a tactic? What's something they could do that most effectively helps them create impact for someone that maybe doesn't have this, you know, under control?
Great question. So the foundation of Tony's work goes into state management, right? Mm-hmm. And whether Tony was working with Andre Agassi or whether he was working with the Golden State Warriors, right? The foundation of what he teaches is in that framework that we call the triad. There's the three elements that make up our emotional state. The foundation of that, we always say physiology first. So if you know someone who's feeling anxiety or feels challenged or pressured during times like this, you know, one of the first things to do is get them up and moving. Motion creates emotion. Right. And we're in control of the emotions that we feel. A lot of people don't want to own that, but the truth is we are in control of the emotions that we feel. And if you're feeling stuck and not able to get into a resourceful emotion, start to move your body. You know, stay hydrated. And if you've got a family member who's challenged, say, listen, go get a glass of water, grab your phone, let's take a walk together. That might mean you're both walking, talking to each other on a cell phone, adhering to social distancing and staying safe. But if you can get them moving and breathing, that starts to move their blood, move their body. It gets the good chemicals moving in their system. And what a lot of people have done is they've Netflix and chilled, right? They've sat on their couch. They've just started watching movies. They haven't moved much. They haven't left the confines of their home, even though their porch, the parks, there are areas where they can go.
The couch is like quicksand. It's become like quicksand, you know? Like...
Man. Remember as a kid, like, do you remember watching cartoons and thinking, like, I hope I never step in quicksand. It's lurking around the corner, right? Well, you're right. The couch has become quicksand. So you got to get them moving and breathing. That's one quick, look, I'll be honest with you. At events when somebody is challenged, right, Tony opens up and people get brave and vulnerable and they start to look at emotional challenges. If they come and find a trainer, the first thing a trainer does is go and get them some water, right? Give their body some of the basics, and then start walking with them. Get them moving and breathing. That covers half of what we've got to do to get them in a resourceful state and get them back to Tony, right? It's the same thing. If you've got like, you don't have to be a therapist or a psychologist. Use the practicalities of, like, have they move their body? And then the other thing is focus and language, right? And when we talk about focus, it's literally asking questions about what they can be grateful for, asking them to go through a gratitude process. If you Google Tony Robbins emotional flood, there's an exercise that he did with one of Oprah's audiences, and they've put it on YouTube, and there's a couple other where you can literally sit and put your hands on your heart, do some heart breathing, connect with yourself, and begin to pull in things you're grateful for. 5 minutes of that, you come out on fire, ready to, and you can go from an unresourceful state to a resourceful state in minutes if you allow yourself to feel the process.
Yeah, for sure.
And then from a language perspective, we always say, watch your TV, watch your transformational vocabulary, which is, somebody may come and say, oh my God, this is an extremely stressful situation. And rather than negate what they say and say, no, it's not, you could say, I understand, some challenges that we face, they definitely present us an opportunity to grow. So what you're doing is using language to reframe. You want to acknowledge and then pace and lead them to a better place. We have to acknowledge that everybody's processing this differently.
Yeah.
But what we want to do as much as we can, especially with the people we care about, is ensure that we create a space where they don't have to sit in a suffering state.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a big, because you know me, I'm all like, let's go figure it out. Is the glass half empty, or is the glass half full? I don't care. Just fill up the fucking glass. Who cares? Like, fill it up. And I've had to make big adjustments to my language because it's real. People are hurting out there, and you can't just be like high energy all the time. You got to meet people where they are first, right? And so I've really kind of I didn't eliminate it, but I toned it down a little bit. And I just spoke to the Wall Street Journal about that, how today, it's really important to just be empathetic more than ever before, because it's, even if someone is making it more than it really is, to them, it's real. To them, it's real. And one thing that I have found very helpful, because obviously, I'm well studied in the triad, sometimes it's distraction too. If you're sitting there and you're having this whole internal episode, and then a gunshot goes off somewhere, all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And you completely forgot about this whole inner battle you were having. And sometimes what works really well for me is I'll just completely, I'll ask a question, but, I forgot to ask you something, and I'll completely change the subject to something entirely, and just try to draw them away from this place to that place. And, look, there's no bathrobe solution, right? But I think meeting people where they are, working through their triad, helping them, or a distraction could be, the really good one. So what else, man? What should people be doing right now? It just got extended. It feels to me like it's plateauing a little bit more. I mean, I have sort of insider information from Julie in the emergency room, and the hospitals are not packed, or whatnot.
Right.
But what do you think people should be doing now? I mean, we've got another month now. What should people be focused on?
I want to qualify that before I share some of that as well, which is I coach a pediatric trauma surgeon at Sinai, right? So she's been busy and is giving me some info, and I've got a cousin out on the West Coast who's a head nurse on his floor. So we're getting reports that things are very much so slowing down.
Yeah.
And in some areas, because of population density, they're being more cautious than in other areas in terms of how they reopen. And well, a lot of that is somewhat out of our control, right? Because the government and the authorities are going to make the decisions they make. What is in our control, what we constantly have to remind ourselves is what is in our control is how we choose to move through each and every day.
Yeah.
And what information we choose to allow in versus what information we choose to just put at bay. And I'll go back to always stay informed, not programmed, right? Stay informed, not programmed. Be careful. They all have an agenda. I think every one of them. But for us, there are common sense things like stay healthy, right? So what does stay healthy mean? Don't eat garbage. Fill your body with fuel and things that are going to support you. Move your body, right? Make sure that you're doing the common sense things. If somebody's out drinking and eating a bunch of crap, you're going to compromise your immune system.
Yeah.
And look, I don't think anybody would argue that a stronger immune system is a good thing to have right now. Right? So the practical things are eat clean, right? You know, make sure that you're drinking water. Do some breathing. You know, Sarah is always good about reminding us to like do our deep breathing, making sure that we're, you know, and I mean, look, if you find yourself slouched over and you're relaxing too much, everybody right now could simply just sit up straight in their chair, take a deep breath in, right? Make sure you're staying hydrated, and just give your body the simple things that it needs. Oxygen, hydration. If your mind is feeling foggy and unclear, you may have been hunched over your computer on your phone too long. Open that body back up. Get that air into the lungs so that this thing can do its job full force. Right? You know, Tony always gets audiences up and keeps us moving and breathing. It's not a parlor trick to keep the audience awake. He's making sure that we're giving this thing what it needs: hydration, oxygen, and movement, blood flow. If you want to be a beast and deliver during this time and stay on top of things professionally and engage with your clients with energy, you've got to give the machine what it needs to function at that level. And as much as I drink a cup of coffee. You're living on, you know, energy drinks, you're gonna crash. If you're not fueling your body with what, you're gonna crash. So you've got to go back to basics and give the machine what it needs to function at its best. And then, you know, mentally speaking, give yourself some quiet time. What I'm finding is, even though a lot of my clients are at home, they're keeping themselves busy and going stir crazy, and they're not quieting their mind. I think another thing to be aware of is, if you're in a home with 3 or 4 or 5 people, just because you're in the same space as them does not mean you have taken a moment to be present with them. And so your children, your roommate, your partner, your spouse, they don't just need to be in proximity in the same space as you, they need your presence. And that means like really, really, really taking the time to turn them. Because here's what's funny: when we go to an office, we start work in the office, we end work in the office, and then we go home. Right now, people have turned their homes into their workspace. I've done this now at home for almost 20 years. I know, like, I shut the door, this is the office space, but when I leave that door, my daughter is allowed to jump on me, right? That is the home. That's her, and you know, she'll come in here and jump on me right now, but we've got to create that space and keep that awareness of like really nurturing, especially the space around us right now, for ourselves as well as the health and well-being of our families.
It's such an important piece, man. Julie's watching this. I'm just waiting for her to come in here and say something like, see, just because you're home doesn't mean you're with us. Like, I'm just waiting for her to like chime in with something. But yeah, honestly, you're in trouble. I'm waiting for
I love you, Julie.
So I'm waiting for that. No, I couldn't agree with you more. Now, the truth is, like, I did have this transformational fitness journey or whatever, in large part thanks to Julie. She's been a huge support system for me. And it wasn't about like looking better. It wasn't about that at all. It was about, at this point in time, I need to be more of a leader than ever before. And the number one, I think, most important thing in order to be the best version of yourself is state and energy. And if, like, for me, carrying all that extra weight, I was always tired. And I was like, all right, I gotta turn this thing into a machine. And so, I mean, my energy's through the roof. I feel better. My immune system obviously gets better. Julie feeds me all kinds of stuff that I don't know what it is, but I just follow directions. And so that's...
Look, when I visit, she feeds me stuff, and I just follow the directions. So I understand that one.
But yeah, it's. I mean, honestly, just like treating the body like a well-oiled machine. You know, you wouldn't feed if you had a Ferrari, you wouldn't feed it like inappropriate diesel fuel or whatever.
You're not putting regular unleaded in the tank of a Ferrari. So you're putting premium fuel in a Ferrari. So you want premium fuel for your body.
Yeah, for sure. And so I couldn't agree more, because in the first couple of weeks, my back actually started to really hurt, because all day long I'm on this computer. I bought a new chair that didn't help, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not moving around enough. So as you know, I set an alarm, and literally every like 2 to 2.5 hours, I get up, I do 50 push-ups, I do some sit-ups, I do some pull-ups, just to get the body moving. And then as I sit back down, I literally feel like as if I'm just starting my day all over again. We're gonna run out of time soon. I try to keep these things to 30 minutes so that people watching. But you know what? I'm gonna keep going. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna keep going.
We're good.
I want you to talk about one of my favorite stories, one of my favorite people in history is Nelson Mandela. Actually, I came to America in 1990, just around the time, he was president. And so I didn't really get to experience him. I was 6 years old. I didn't really get a chance to experience him. But then Julie and I went to Africa, and we visited Robbins Island, and, we did the whole tour. And in Africa, they call it Mandela fever. And he was just one of these special humans that just shifts perspective. And so, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your perspective.
Absolutely. Funny enough, a very special place in my heart too, growing up. Funny enough, when I was in elementary school for Black History Month,
oh, no way.
I had to read the part of Nelson Mandela in my class.
I love it.
And I learned about him at a young age. My mom was very good about educating us about what was happening globally, and she was very much, an advocate for civil rights. So whether that was happening in the U.S. or in other countries, she kept us aware of those things. And very interesting thing, Tony has interviewed so many amazing people, right? And he worked with Princess Diana and Mikhail Gorbachev during that time period, Reagan. He's advised almost every president to date, right? And he had an opportunity to interview Nelson Mandela. And the way Tony tells the story, and I love this, right? He's sitting down and they're going through questions. And, at this point, Mandela is president of South Africa. And Tony says, listen, you were wrongfully imprisoned or quarantined. I'm just going to throw that out there. For 27 years. How did you survive? And Mandela kind of looks at him, and he puts his hand in the chair and he stands up. And you know what happens when the president stands? Everybody stands. Everybody stands up. So then Tony stands up. He's kind of looking like, okay, what's happening? And Mandela gets real close to Tony. He's a little bit shorter than Tony. And Tony's, but in that moment, Tony says that he felt his presence directly, right? And he said, I didn't survive. I prepared.
Can you say that again? Can you repeat that?
I didn't survive. I prepared. And we call that the Mandela principle. Not the Mandela effect. That's conspiracy theory stuff. The Mandela principle. And the Mandela principle is that at any moment where you feel yourself in a challenge, you sit and you prepare. Now, what did he do? He learned Afrikaans. He learned a new skill. He learned how to speak the language of the very people that put him in prison. He learned their political system. He learned how to negotiate. Look at the outcome, because he chose to prepare, right? What's bad is always present, survival, and so is what's good, preparation, right? We choose the emotion we want to live in. Survival feels very different than preparation. Survival, we're at the effect. Preparation, we're at cause. And so he moves into preparation. He learns these skills, and then he comes out, shakes the hands of de Klerk, right? The guy who put him in prison, said, let's create peace. Now, Eugene, I don't think you or I, if we were wrongfully imprisoned, would come out peaceful, right? But look at the effect, and to this day, and God bless him, even though he's passed, people still talk about his leadership, his impact, the insights that he shared. And he leaves this legacy of showing us what preparation can do. Right? When we choose to say at any moment where we feel challenged, it's time to sit down and prepare. That's a leadership principle that any of us can adopt, especially right now. Are you preparing for what's better? This is another thing. My friend Chad, who is the director down at that resort, he tells people he will not use the term new normal. He says, because it's not going to be new normal. It's going to be better. Everything on the other side of this, for all of us who choose this perspective, means it's going to be better on the other side. It's better because we've prepared. It's better because we've built muscle. It's better because there's always opportunity. And Tony's taught us this for years, right? No matter what season we're in, winter, spring, summer, or fall, there is always opportunity. And how many companies started in a down market? How many companies started and are thriving during GE, Bath and Body Works, Disney, AT&T, Verizon, Pizza Hut? I could keep going. There's lists. Every major brand that we adopt today in our lives that have billboard, they all started in a down market. So for anyone who thinks that they're, and look, Sir John Templeton said that the best time to invest is during maximum pessimism. When everybody else is pessimistic, we look at markets. What markets? The stock market, the bond market, the real estate market. There's opportunity. Look, we were just celebrating. You got deals coming in right now. People think business has stopped. business has not stopped.
No, it has not. No, it has not at all.
So, you know, we've got to take a look at that. And Mandela says we can take advantage of all of that by preparation.
Yeah, it's so profound. And it's fun how it comes like full circle to energy and state, because one of my favorite lines, that's my favorite line is, I didn't survive, I prepared. Because we think of survival, you're just waiting for the finish line, for death, for like, you're just waiting for something to be over. Whereas thriving, you're pulled towards a mission, you know, like
Yes.
preparing, you're pulled towards something bigger than yourself. And one of my other favorite lines of his, it's all over like South Africa, is reconciliation, not revenge. And so
Yes.
in another interview with him, they asked him, like, how did you do it? I mean, these guards, they pissed on him, they beat him up, they verbally abused him. I mean, they tortured him. And then he came out and shook their hands and put him in, you know, in employee positions and whatever. And he said this line that, like, it actually shifted the way I look at the world. And he said that if I had held on to that belief system when I left prison, then I would have never really left prison. And that was so, like, profound, man. You know, how many times do we bicker with a friend or a coworker over some goddamn bullshit, and we hold on to it and it shapes the relationship? Whereas it's like, man, just elevate, you know, just reconciliation. Forget about revenge, forget about ego, just reconciliation, forward progress.
Yeah.
Mike, you are the man. I think I could do this for the next like 16 hours or something. I'm gonna ask you one final question, and then I'm gonna let everyone get back to their day. You have such a unique perspective. You've got clients all over the world. Your reach, your affiliation, not just with Tony, but with everyone you speak to.
We're back to the chair. We're back to the chair.
Damn it! It's the price of waving at people.
All good.
What's your perspective? What's your global perspective? Like, what are you seeing out there? What's the narrative like? What's business like? I mean, God, anything you want to share I think would be of value. But what's sort of going on out there?
You know, there's all these narratives, and people say, well, if you're not a health expert, you shouldn't be. If you're not a doctor, you shouldn't be talking about COVID. And if you're not, this should be. But they're like, step into my common sense corner, right? Which is when we start to look at data, real data from the ground. When we start to look at how the body works and how health works, do we have to take this thing seriously because it spreads quickly? Absolutely. Is it going to morph and change? Yeah, we're already seeing that, right? So we have to acknowledge that and be careful and very empathetic to people who have challenges. Look, my father and other people that I care about deeply in my life are immune compromised. I want them kept safe. I have no problems wearing a mask in public for myself and for other people. Like, I don't have challenges with that. If it gives peace of mind to an elderly lady who her one trip out that week is to get food for her and her family, and she can't understand what's going on, if I can give her that peace of mind by putting a mask on for a few minutes, I'll do that. Yeah. At the same time, we have to look at the response of the majority of people that are eager to get out and restart things. We have to balance the fact that economic challenge is just as hard for another segment of the population. And we've got to do our part as much as possible to keep that started. The good news on the other end, if you want a sneak peek into where people's emotion is, look up how many bookings Carnival Cruise Line booked for August. They're up 600% over last year, which tells you that there's a ton of people emotionally who are done with quarantine, who are ready to travel, ready to restart their lives, and they're looking at it. Look, they're intelligent people. They're looking at it practically and saying, I understand risk, I understand health, I'm going to wash my hands, I may do a few things, but there are cruises booked at a level that have never happened before because the emotional response on the other side of restraint is freedom.
Yep.
And people will act first on emotion and back it up with logic.
Yeah.
So we want to look globally and kind of start to watch movement and balance. How do we care for those that need the care while respecting the opportunity that other people want to take advantage of? And I think that balance will begin to happen as more intelligent conversation starts. But I'll say this. Tony was really smart back in 2007, 2008. He looked at business, and it's the reason we started Business Mastery, and he said, the government's not going to bail here. Banks aren't going to bail it out. The government's not going to bail it out. What we're going to do is focus on training and teaching small and medium-sized businesses how to create an impact in their community. And he opened up this toolbox to small and medium-sized business owners. They're the ones that went back into communities, restarted businesses, took the risks, started things, and re-kickstarted the economy after 2008. You know, while the government was busy bailing out big businesses that could barely hold themselves up, what kickstarted the economy was people like you who opened up offices in the middle of a downturn and got in the game of real estate, got in the game of, you know, I had comic book stores, right? We all did our part to employ as many people as we could and start some stuff. And I think if we all take the responsibility to say what that person does is none of my business and it's out of my control.
Right.
What I can control is how I show up and what I contribute.
Right.
If we all adopt self-leadership and measure ourselves based on our breadth of impact in our circle of influence and our depth of impact in being able to create a great state and contribute that first to our teams and the people around us, that's how we get to the other side of this.
That's right.
There's no regulation, piece of control, piece of health advice. None of that is as important as the energy we contribute to the people around us.
That's right.
And that starts by preparing ourselves daily. You have a fucking spreadsheet that you use to track and measure your daily habits and your consistency in them, right? And you hold yourself accountable to your team and to friends, and you're a leader in showing up and exercising with other people online right now. Like you do your insanity workouts. Like, that's leadership. That's how we turn it around. We show up and we provide our community and our circle of influence, our tribe, with what they need to get through it. That's how we get to the other side of it. Because globally, there's so many different opinions. Like, let those people argue.
Yeah.
Let the people that want their title to mean something argue. The rest of us are just going to get on with life and start to support each other and continue to move things forward. And I think that's the most important thing to focus on is, are we preparing ourselves daily through our habits and rituals to show up with great energy and not be Pollyanna, see things as they are, but then hold a vision for them being better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man. And honestly, I've been talking about on the show several times how there's the bookends of what's coming next. Some people think it's going to be depression and the applications are unfathomable and etc. And other people think,
good.
Yeah, right.
No,
don't get me started, exactly. But other people think that this is, it's a race. Everybody's in the starting line, and as soon as quarantine starts lifting, it's going to be a huge economic boom, and nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. We're seeing in the real estate market a total V bounce back. Inquiries are up.
Yes.
Offers are coming in. Contracts are being signed. Listings are going live. We just listed a new development 2 days ago or something like that, and we already got 4 people wanting to see it. We just got 3 offers in the last 48 hours. It's happening. Like the ramp up has begun. I
told you how resourceful some of my clients were getting, right? Where the title companies wanted to support the realtor as well as both ends of the transaction, and they couldn't get docs. But they could do enough research to okay the transaction, so they just went out and got these small insurance policies that they could put against the transaction, so they could move the business forward. People are resourceful. You put a challenge in front of people who are committed, they will find a way.
Especially
and look, I was gonna say, you live in the city that models that. You're gonna find. My sister lives there too. You know this, right? You're gonna keep it moving in the right direction. Sorry. I had a call coming in, so it blinked real quick. But that's how it goes, man. That's how it goes. People will find a way. They'll stay committed. But preparation and holding that vision for seeing it better than it is are things that we can all start applying now.
Yeah, for sure. So for everybody that's watching this, there's a line. If you're watching this now live, or if you're going to watch it after you're hearing this, there's a line from Keith Cunningham that I'm absolutely obsessed with. The price of awareness is responsibility. The price of awareness is responsibility. So for anyone that's watched this, you've been giving awareness, and now the price of this is it's your responsibility to live your life in the best possible state, take this into practice, find those around you and pay it forward. And leadership doesn't start at the very top. Actually, leadership starts at the bottom up in many cases, where, impacting or influencing, if each one of us, 1 million people influences one person, that's 2 million and so on and so forth. And so, Mike, thank you very, very much. For anyone that's interested, Mike Savage does do coaching. I'm not going to get into the financials. That's for you and him to discuss. But if anyone's interested in coaching with him, I've been coaching with him for 3 years. My life is not where it is without him. So thank you, sir. He's seen me through the darkest of my times where I thought I was going to be homeless and dead, and it was dark, and none of it was actually real because I wasn't seeing things as they actually are. The mind and some hormonal stuff took over for a while, but he saw me through all that. We've legitimately been through dark times and good times. But if anyone's interested, DM me, email me, whatever. I'll put you guys in touch. I'm gonna take a moment to call out somebody that should still be watching. I'm gonna call out Julie Litvak. She is absolutely brilliant in her knowledge of both modern medicine and alternative medicine. She's been in the ER for over a decade, 12, 13 years, whatever it is, and studying alternative medicine for around a decade as well. Yes. And Sarah Katz, she's asked to come on our show to talk about how to improve your immune system, what to look out for. I literally don't know anyone more qualified to speak on the matter, and I'm living proof because I'm one of her, patients or whatever their terminology is. So, Julie, please connect with Sarah Katz. We'll get you on the show as soon as humanly possible. Sarah, if we got to move somebody, she's the MVP. She gets priority booking in Casa de Litvak. Michael Savage, thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're a brother of mine, of the teams, of the cities, even though you're not a resident here. Be well, be safe. Till next time, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.